So somebody always asks, when were these pictures taken and when did I go on this trip? It's actually a couple of trips, but it's mainly from August of 2009. And I subtitled it Big Trees and Volcanoes because you're going to see a lot of those. So this was a friendship horse trip, first of all, to the city of Sacramento for a week stay there. So we got to see some of the surrounding area as well as Sacramento. And then my sisters met me and we traveled north to the rest of these. And then I traveled by myself after they left me. So it was kind of a three-part trip. So our first stop is going to be in Sacramento. And as I say, we're going to see some things around there, some places around there, Lake Tahoe, and the Calaveras Big Tree State Park. On my way back, I actually went to Kings Canyon, but it kind of fit with the Calaveras. When my sisters arrived, we went up to Lassen National Park and stayed there a few days, went by Mount Shasta up to Ashland, and they left from Medford. Ooh, what was that? We went to Crater Lake and I went to down the coast to see the redwoods. So this is the official seal of California. It was embedded in the state capitol floor. And just kind of an overview of it. Of course, the Spanish were there pretty early, at least the early 1800s, but the city of Sacramento was founded in 1850. And it is the state capital of California. And you're going to recognize the architecture as modeled after the US Capitol. We had a guided tour through the Capitol, which was very nice. They have done some renovations on it, and it had the old wood and stuff in it. And the pictures of every one of the state governors, and most of them, of course, look like the really serious pictures, you know, the portrait kind of stuff, except for Jerry Brown. And so I took his picture. He didn't look like any of the rest of them. And beautiful dome, completed in the late 1800s, this whole building was. So it's a lovely place to be. It's right in the downtown area. You see it right here. And we also visited the Railroad Museum and Old Sacramento. So they're all just within walking distance. And from the Capitol, it's like walking through a park and you're really guided right to the Old Sacramento. You see some of the walkways through here and places to eat and places that you can visit along the way. And when you get to Old Sacramento, you're looking at the original Sutter's Fort from the Gold Rush days, and which became Old Sacramento. And of course, now it's a tourist area. It is right along the river. And of course, we know that 1848 was when gold was discovered and people did the big rush to California. Not far from looking down the river, we see the Sacramento River and the bridge, the Tower Bridge, built in 1935. And there are steamboats that run along the river if you'd like to do that. Here's one tied up, not an excellent picture of it from the standpoint that I took it, but they are available if you'd like to do that. But lots of the old buildings, and a lot of them are still in operation as stores and cafes and things like that. This Sacramento was the end point for the Wells Fargo and also for the Pony Express, which came from Council Bluff, Iowa. So we did a little walk through there and then proceeded on to the Railroad Museum. And if you're a railroad buff, this is the place to go. Railroads were a big thing in getting the development of to the West, because up till this time, people were coming in wagon trains and taking months to get there. So they began both in California and in Iowa to build this railroad. And it's still amazing to me that they actually came together and it all came together in the middle. So this end of it was financed by the big fours, the big millionaires there. Mark Hopkins, you're going to recognize some of these names. Charles Crocker, we'll see his museum in a minute. Hunting, there's a Huntington Museum in Pasadena. Leland Stanford, of course, Stanford University. So they were the rich guys that financed this because they could see the railroad coming to California as a big boon to the economic development of that area. We also had a guided tour through the Railroad Museum, which was nice, with lots of information about it and how it got built. It was the first transcontinental railroad, as it says, 1,911 miles they did. And as I say, they met in the middle and put this golden spike in it. And here's the famous picture of it, The Last Spike by Thomas Hill, where the two railroad sections came together in the middle, and the painting was painted of this. And this would be Leland Stanford here, who drove in the last nail. So there are all kinds of fancy engines, and I'm sure they are a lot cleaner in this museum than they really were as they were puffing and along the way belching smoke, because these are coal burning, of course, but they're beautiful, and all kinds of engines. And not only engines, but there's Pullman cars. Remember, you're not on your coach anymore. You have a sleeping car, and you have a place where you can eat, and they have a restaurant in there, a place where they were cooking the meals in the Pullman cars. Along the railroad line too, we had these tunnels, some through the mountains, but also some just alongside the mountains. And they were to keep these snowdrifts off the railing, because up in the mountains, of course, snowdrift could be 20 feet deep. And of course, then you're out of business. So these tunnels were very common up in the Rockies. And at and then Sierras too. On the top floor, it's full of toy trains. So if you're a kid, whatever age, you can go play with the trains. Doesn't that sound like fun? So these were my hosts, Carol and Ken, at the Crocker Art Museum, named after the Crocker we just talked about. A beautiful old mansion, and now turned into a public museum, art museum. And just seeing the building was very nice, because it's in an old house, and I like those old houses. This painting I thought was sort of interesting. I'm just going to show you a close-up. It's made of little lines and little pictures in itself. I think a man dying is what it was about. Another visit to a museum was the California Museum for History, Women, and the Arts. And it had a string of famous people. Just these are, of course, not all the famous Californians, but just the end of this that stretched all around our gallery. This is the outside of it, a very interesting place. So we're going to move on now to one of our day trips to Lake Tahoe. There were members from the Sacramento Club that lived there, and we were able to visit them for lunch and all in that area. So it's a very pretty place. So coming up from Sacramento, almost at sea level, you're coming up to about 6,000 feet at the rim. And it's a nice climb up there, wooded and cooler, and a very deep lake. It's the largest freshwater lake in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and is right on the state line. So it has this great volume of water because it is so deep. And there are beautiful views from everywhere you look. It's a very old lake, and it's hard to explain how it formed. It wasn't exactly from a volcano exploding, and this is the crater, but it was in 3 different faults that were shifting, and then volcanic action, including volcano blowing up in this whole area. So this lake did form, and it is very, very deep, as I said, only second only to Crater Lake, which we are also going to see. It's 22 miles long, 12 miles wide. You can drive around it. You have views all from different viewpoints on the lake. My sisters and I stayed at the north end in Incline Village one year, but I don't have pictures of that in this particular presentation. But this is a little bay at the south end. It has a little island in it. It has been revered by the Indians for many, many years. In fact, they're not happy about it being industrialized the way it is now. At the north end, it does empty out into the Truckee River. And it is controlled by a dam so that it doesn't flood downstream. And Donner Lake is just to the north of it. Along the south end too, there is the site of the Winter Olympics from 1960s. You can see in the picture along here, and this is where the river flows out. I mean, the lake flows out into the Truckee River. So Tahoe is known for a lot of things, how beautiful and it is, and clear water. It's a big ski area in the winter, particularly the North Shore and the north side of it, and the casinos that are nearby in Nevada. In fact, our breakfast, when I was there with my sisters, our breakfast coupon was at a casino for our hotel. And we just had a look at the entrance to Squaw Valley, which was the site of the Olympics in 1960. So just a few pictures of how beautiful it is. You can get on from the south end onto one of these boats that will take you along Emerald Island and Emerald Bay, and see how pretty it is from just wherever you look. There are a few beaches. This one at the south shore seems to be the largest one. We had a small one on in Incline Village, and there's another one on the east side. But most of it does not have beaches. But where they are, they're very nice. Along the south end too was something I was not aware of, and that was because I'd been there before, was the Tahoe estates. And these estates were a historic site now, but they're about 40 acres that was made up of these 3 family estates of these 3 families. And they left it to their children, and their children made it into a resort. So they built additional cabins. This was in the late 1880s. And turned it into a resort property. So one of these people was the Baldwin family, I believe it was. Yeah, like Lucky Baldwin, and he made it into this resort. One of his grandchildren later on tore the resort down, but the old buildings are still there. And there's some cottages that you can visit and visit all of the houses of the people, the 3 families. So the Baldwin estate is one of them. Here would be I think it's his daughter and grandchildren. So it's interesting, look back in time, like you're stepping back 100 years or so. And they have shoreline property. So these woods and beach are located on their property. Most people know about the Donner Party trying to cross the Sierras in winter, and this statue is at the Donner Pass State Park in a winter scene, which I took off the internet. It's a nice visitor center there that exhibits not only about the Donner Party, but also about the whole immigrant experience, about the Indians who lived there, about the Chinese who constructed the railroad, and about the Donner Pass itself. There's also nice wooded areas that with trails through it. So this is about the Donner Party. They were stranded in an early snowstorm. Apparently they had trouble getting their gear together when they left, I think probably from St. Louis or somewhere in that area, headed for Oregon, and then they missed a turn as well. So they ended up being in this high pass and with an early winter storm. And some people did go for help, but they did not return until many of the party had died. So only a few survived. And of course, they're known for dining on their fellow travelers after they had died, of course. And this visitor center does talk about that. So there were some survivors from it, but there are lovely trails through it and a place where they have a memorial to the people who died in the Donner Party. So our next stop is the Calaveras Big Tree State Park, and you may or may not know that this is a sequoia. And then the Calaveras Big Trees are up in the high part, like close to Tahoe. And some of these trees have poles in them, so we have a little fun with that. And you may know the word Calaveras also from the Mark Twain story about the Calaveras jumping frog. So you tend to see the jumping frog on a lot of the Calaveras shops and things around there. You get an idea how big these trees are. These are some of our folks who came from Dallas with our Sacramento people. And just walking through, this is 2 photos just put together, so they're taking it in the same place, but how big these trees are. So a little bit about the difference between sequoias and redwoods, because we're going to come to those in a minute too. So the sequoias can live up to 3,000 years. So some of these trees have been there before the birth of Christ. Big branches, big, thick bark, and they may be hollow in the middle, and that doesn't seem to bother them any. Be produced by seeds only, but they're too porous to use for lumber. So you never hear of a sequoia deck. You hear about redwood decks. And they live inland and in this upland country where it's drier and cooler. So the giant redwoods, on the other hand, don't live quite as long, and but they do have really good lumber that we use for furniture and redwood decks and things like that. Can sprout either by seed or sprout. Now they like the coastland. So the Redwood National Park and the state parks of California are all along the coast where it's foggy and it's sea level, and they seem to like that climate, and it's good. So both of them are particular about where they grow. Now this is again putting perspective how big these trees are when you see people next to them. This is a school group that was visiting at Calaveras. How huge these trees are. Early on, that when people came and found these big trees, they cut down this one. You thought, oh no. And of course, now we're very careful about preserving them because there are not that many left of either of those. So this one was called the Discovery Stump. And you'll see that they looked to see how many tree rings they were. So this one would have been a seed in 600 AD. It grew to about 300 feet, a little bit about that tree there. But they cut it down and didn't know what to do with it. So they had bands play on it and different things like that. They had a bowling alley and dancing up on top. So they did use it, but it's still there after all this time, and it was cut down a long time ago. So one of our people then was climbing up on it. It does have a little ladder where you can get on top of it and looking at information about it, about the sequoias. A very good visitor center, and you see the California bear, who is the state animal, and another one inside the visitor center. And a very nice visitor center, particularly about the trees and the wildlife and so forth in the area. A lot about the trees. And here's a cute little kid I saw in the gift shop with the jumping. I love that picture. And we proceeded on to a nearby town called Murphy's, which was a gold rush town, gold in the area. And there are several old buildings still there, particularly this one, Murphy's Hotel, opened right after the gold rush days, or in that same time period in 1856, which is still running, the oldest California hotel that's still in business. And it's particularly known because Mark Twain and John Muir and other people like that stayed at this hotel back in those days. So we were able to look at some of the rooms still decorated in that 1890s style. And of course, knowing California, there are plenty of wineries everywhere. So we also visited the Ironstone Winery nearby and had some tasting there. So I put Kings Canyon here, even though it was on my way back, because of the sequoias. Kings Canyon is right next door to Sequoia National Park. In fact, you have to go through Sequoia National Park to get to Kings Canyon. And it's also very close to Yosemite, which I'm not including. That's really another whole program. But Kings Canyon is particularly known for the large General Grant tree, which is the large, I think it's the second largest of the trees. And it is a canyon. First named General Grant Park, but then later changed to Kings Canyon. This is kind of a diorama in the visitor center. You see the road going over the mountains, but the river running through this canyon all the way to a dead end with waterfalls at the end of it. So I wanted to do this, visit the trees, of course, and then also do that road up the canyon. And these are some of the biggest trees in the area, or in Kings Canyon and in Sequoia. And take a look at this tree. It's very well known. Everybody has a picture of this tree, this big knot on the side of it, and the size of the railings here, because the next picture is the same tree, again with people next to it. So you get an idea how huge they are. They're just overwhelming. As I say, they often were hollowed out, and when they cut this tree down about 100 years ago, they made a bar out of it. So the gold rush prospectors could come into a bar and have a drink inside the sequoia tree. So these are just some pictures along the canyon, along this drive, a very pretty drive. And at the end of it, the waterfalls, of course, with a sign that says no swimming, and check the people out here. And here. And it wouldn't appeal to me. This is water off the snow. I can just imagine how freezing cold that was, but here they are in the water. And I think it's fairly dangerous also on those rocks, but there they were. But beautiful views all through this park, everywhere you go. So I had to pull over once in a while on very narrow roads to take these because you can't really do it when you're driving. Here's the road right here. You get an idea. So Lassen Volcanic Park. I picked up my sisters after the week in Sacramento, and we drove up to Lassen Volcano Park. And it's one of the least visited parks, which really surprised me because I thought it was a really wonderful one. We've been to a lot of the national parks on travels that we've done. It's up near Redding, if you can see it along right here. So if you come up from Sacramento, you would cross over to Lassen right here. It's in north of Sacramento, about 125 miles, I think. And there is camping in the park. I don't think there's a lodge though there. We stayed outside the park, in fact, right outside the park. And this is an old kind of rustic tourist court kind of place. We had the rocking chairs. They had a nice little cafe so we could eat our meals there, and all kinds of stuff from the area. My sister made a new friend. So in what's interesting about Lassen is that the 4 types of volcanoes are all in this park, all 4 of them. The one that's the most prominent and the highest is this one of Mount Lassen, which exploded and made a lava dome. It kind of was thick and it filled up until it made this, but it's actually a volcano. It's sometimes called, I've forgotten the name of it. It's going to come up on another slide to remind me. This is the one we hear of the most, the cinder cone that shoots off and really makes a big mess. The shield volcanoes are the ones they have in Hawaii. They're coming up from the bottom and they just ooze lava down the side. Not so much of this big stuff like Mount St. Helens. Then of course we have the kind that has a combination of these 2. So all 4 of those are in the park. Here was the last time that Lassen Peak exploded, which was 1915, which gives us a little confidence in walking around because it's a volcanic area similar to Yellowstone in that there is some thermal activity in the area all over. So this lava dome, that was the other thing is called a lava dome type. But it's a beautiful lake and lots of hiking trails and interesting things to see in it. Here you see Mount Lassen again on the left, but other types of volcanoes in the park as well. One of the really pretty lakes that we found was Manzanita Lake. And again, hardly anybody there, a few campers, a few fishermen, but beautiful views of all the area around it. Some of the campers. And my sisters took a dip in the lake, a little cool for me, but you know. So we did some hiking over to the thermal area, which, as I say, would be similar to Yellowstone. And you see the ash from the volcanoes and some craters. And these would be dormant ones, but there are lots of rocks and things like that. That's really interesting landscaping. And I was surprised how few people we saw. And again, this looks entirely different, same trail. So we're coming up now to some of the thermal spots. And this is going to look familiar to Yellowstone. You have the mud pots and the vents with the hot water coming out. So that stuff's still bubbling under there. So it says that it's been doing this for about 3 million years. But the last eruptions were from the cinder cone, which is about 350 years ago, and Lassen about 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago. So we weren't too worried about walking around in it, but it does, it is an active area. And off to the side, I didn't show you on the map, but down in another part of it is a side area with this lovely waterfall every day falls. And then over a little farther, one of the other ones, the pinnacles, which we also have at Crater. So then when we left Lassen, we drove north along the road. You can see Mount Shasta quite easily. And the three volcanoes, mostly volcanic areas, were Lassen, Long Valley, and Mount Shasta on the still rumbling list. Lassen would be the farthest south of that list of volcanic mountains that go up to Rainier, Mount Helens, Mount Baker, Washington, etc. So we visited Ashland, Oregon, which is a very cute little town. It's known for its outdoor activities of hiking and hang gliding and whitewater rafting, fishing, all that along the rivers, and also for its Shakespeare Theater. It has a big festival in summertime. So along these streets, you'll see lots of outfitters and little cute little cafes and all that kind of stuff. The little store, little cafe. And a pretty little park along the river, one of the tributaries to the Rogue River, I believe it is. Nice little art museum, quilts. We did visit the Shakespeare Theater. We didn't go to a Shakespeare play. You see a guide down here giving a little guided tour. We didn't go to a Shakespearean play because the day we were there, that's not what they happened to be showing, but we saw a play about Shakespeare, which was quite interesting and very enjoyable. And here's a sign about their festival. So this was in August, and they do run it in August. We did another night we were there, we visited the local band in the park. Everybody likes their local band. They did a good job. So our next stop was Crater Lake, a little farther north. Again, a volcanic lake. And this is the island that you see right here, Wizard Island. They do have a National Park Lodge right here, and some falls area, and these pinnacles that I'll show you. This is just a small piece. What these two little islands are after the crater erupted, then it started building a cone of more lava coming up. So that's what that little island is. It's really more lava from the crater itself. The fifth oldest national park and the only national park in Oregon, which kind of surprised me. And it's a remnant of Mount Mazama that collapsed on itself and then started building up this cone about 5700 BCE. Not active anymore, obviously. A nice old rustic lodge like in many of the national parks. And so the lake is almost 2,000 feet deep at its deepest, the deepest lake in the United States. The caldera, which is this rim around it, has elevation of 7,000 to 8,000 feet. So when you're talking about walking around this caldera, we're talking about a drop of maybe 1,000 feet. And most of it is just straight down. There's very little that's sloped for you to get down to the lake level at about 6,000 feet. But lots of evidence of the volcanic activity with the ash and kind of rock formations that you would see around a volcano. And this is, I say, farther off from the lake called the Pinnacles, but also in that volcanic area. Also nice hiking in Crater Lake. It doesn't have any streams flowing in or out of it, unlike Tahoe. So all the water that's in the lake comes from the snow or rain that falls into it. It's strictly there. And if the water level's lower, it's from evaporation or just seeping into the ground. But there's usually always water in it. Very rocky coastline.
Mary, does anyone live around Crater Lake?
There are not any cottages or homes, if that's what you mean. It is
Right.
a national park.
Okay.
So other than camping or at the lodge, no, nobody lives there permanently. So this other little bitty one is called a phantom ship, also from the lava flow. And quite near there is a little gold rush town called Jacksonville. We just went over there for a day. It was discovered in Rich Gulch in 1851 and grew into one of the gold rush towns, one of these cute little towns again, cute downtown. You see the stagecoach shop and has a little tour bus that you can ride around the town in, which we did. Some of the Victorian style houses and churches were cute. And we enjoyed a little day there. And the deer were right there in the yard. So the last part was, as I say, I left my sisters off in Medford, right up the, right near Ashland and Crater Lake. And they went on to Portland to see people that they knew in Portland. And I drove back then from there to Dallas in 6 days. First of all, along the Redwood, along that North California coast through the Redwood National Park, which is actually Redwood and state parks. They started out being state parks and then kind of looped them all together into Redwood National Park. I know this is not a very good map, but this is the coastline, and all along through here are different places you can stop to see the redwoods. And like the sequoias, they're just great big trees. They just reach up, and very often they're split and home for little animals or good for furniture once they're cut down. And redwood foresting has pretty much ground to a halt because of the how long it takes to grow a redwood tree and the absence of more that are going to be loggable very, very soon. So there, in some of the places along the way, there are information about some of the animals that live around there and in the trees themselves, high up, and also in these various holes that are in it. And here again, you see with the people next to them, how big they are. And along the Mendocino coast then, this is the kind of climate they like, this fogginess, particularly early in the morning. Often it clears off. But the Mendocino coast all along here, the redwoods are particularly up in here. This would be Sacramento, I'm sorry, San Francisco and Sacramento over here. But this is the area for the Mendocino coast, which is a much rockier coastline than farther down. In fact, it's almost like there's two different states, Southern California and Northern California. They look entirely different. Not very many beaches, mostly rock, and there's these headlands. You see it's clearing up as the day wears on. The beaches there are just small, or they'll have shorebirds and things like that, pretty cold water, but very scenic. Lots of wildflowers, birds. Good for a picnic now and then. So here are some of our birds and just walking right down the highway. And I did stay with an evergreener inland closer to Livermore, and very winding roads through these mountains, and these golden fields with the green trees were really very pretty. This was from my GPS. You can see when you see a road like that, you're talking winding roads through the mountains, similar to this. So this is going to be the end of our trip through Northern California. And if you've not been there, I hope you get a chance to do that sometime. It is just a very special world, lots of things to see.
Well, Mary, there are some questions. Do you want to go ahead and answer them before we get to the Oregon one?
This is all of it. This is Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Lake and Ashland are in Oregon.
Oh, okay. Well, we do have some questions, so let me go ahead and pull those up. So Bonnie wanted to know, is there an area where you can walk down to the lake and take a boat ride on the lake? Bill, did this in the afternoon of the day we were there after riding his bicycle around the lake during the morning. Very little traffic when we were there September of 2014.
Now we're talking Crater Lake or Tahoe?
This was Kathleen, this is Bonnie. This was in at Crater Lake, and there is an area, they consider it a rugged walk down to the lake level. I did not go, but Bill did. In fact, their boat died while they were out on the lake and they had to be towed back. So he had an extra hour or so out on the lake, but he did that after he'd ridden his bike all the way around the lake that morning on his bicycle.
Yes, that slope down is near the lodge. We knew about that. And because you're looking at about 1,000 feet more or less down, we didn't try to do that. I don't do up.
Yeah, that's what we were told, is the up was very bad, and I opted not to do it also because of that.
Smart lady too. So yes, we knew about that, but most of it is a sheer drop or pretty close.
Yeah.
So it's not very walkable otherwise, but yes, there is one place where you can get down and there are boats that will take you out to Wizard Island or around the lake. I don't think we even saw any while we were there. I don't think they've really run very often or aren't very common.
Stan and Sandra asked a question. And it was early on, and I'm not sure which lake. It might have been Lassen, what you were talking about. And the question was, how do you know what is a volcano or a mountain?
You can tell from what's around it usually. You saw some of that ash that's around it and the little pinnacles that stick up. Those are evidence. And of course, the vents, if they're active thermal areas, you don't always know. We do know about that particular range of mountains along our west coast because they have erupted and we do have evidence of eruption. So, Lassen would be the farthest, the lowest, farthest south, I should say, in this whole chain of volcanoes. They're on that fault line, and when you have a fault, you've got a crack in the magma to let the magma up that forms these volcanoes. So that's just this whole chain of them, and you know where to look for them. You're not going to find them in Iowa because the conditions aren't right for them, but a lot of places it is. So it depends on what the geology is. You talk to any good geologist and they can tell you exactly where they are, where they're going to be too. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay.
It doesn't always have a crater like at the top. You remember Mount St. Helens? When it exploded, it was this beautiful shape. And then it went like this. That whole top blew off. But it's already forming a cone inside of it. And the same with Kilauea, even though it's a different kind, it's a shield volcano, but it's still, as it's erupting with the lava flow, it's building another cone inside of it, as well as more land around it.
Our volcano in Montreal, Mount Royal, is just a crater, and we have a small lake in there.
And a park on the top.
Yeah, those are much older, and you're unlikely to have any activity from those. Even the Hawaiian Islands, the Northern Islands, haven't been active in years and years. They aren't considered active anymore. They're considered dormant. But the Southern Hawaiian Islands do have activity on them, and so does this whole chain of mountains along the western U.S. And of course, there are other places like Yellowstone that do have thermal activity.
Okay. So Jeanette from New Jersey said, how much planning and research does Mary do before a trip?
Well, I think you'd be surprised at how much I research after the trip. I see. What can I tell these people besides, this is another pretty picture. There's a lake. There's another lake. There's a tree. I do try to do some research before I do these so I can tell you something about them as well as just look at pictures. But we did learn some of this when we were there, of course, and I took pictures of signs. I like to take pictures of signs because they often instruct me once I'm back, and take every folder that's in the visitor center about all these places.
Right.
About planning beforehand. I'm kind of the planner in my family when I go with my sisters, unless it's their city, I'm the planner. So if we're going to Denver or Vancouver, they do it, but anywhere else, I'm the one. So I look and see, well, what's a good place to go? I look at the National Geographic travel guides, the little ones that are really good at giving you even a step-by-step route to take, and what to see at every point. So there are lots of travel books. Of course, now we use internet so much more than we did back when I was doing this. But I like to see what's in the area. And as you say, Evergreeners will often tell you what's around. But I do some planning before I depend on Evergreeners for that information. Just see what's in the area, what we can do, and how long do we need to stay.
Sure. I did notice, I looked at before your presentation earlier this afternoon about where Evergreeners were around some of these places. And we actually have an Evergreen member in Reading, which is near Lassen, right?
I was there with two sisters, so I don't always have availability when it's not just me.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
I drove back in 6 days and I stayed with an Evergreener every night all the way.
That's wonderful. Let's see. So talking about your the sequoia trees and the redwoods, it seems like the redwoods extend much more down the coast, and the sequoias, are they just sort of in that one spot?
Yeah, they're upland. They're not along the coast. That's not,
So,
they like to be up in the mountains where it's drier and no fog.
no fog. So you wouldn't just find, like if we were in Dallas, would all of the redwoods be like at the Arboretum and not really in Fort Worth?
Well,
I mean,
you could plant one, and actually I've seen some in gardens,
Oh.
but they're not native to those. I mean, this is where they grow from seed. They're native to those places, and they started, as you see, thousands of years ago.
yeah.
Those big ones
Yeah.
are really old.
So Jack asked a question, and I wasn't sure if it was a serious question to you or a joke question to me, because we had I have a sister-in-law who lives in California, and the families were getting together and the kids were little, and she got us these enormous banana slug rubber, like banana slugs. And Jack asked if you saw any banana slugs.
I did.
Because they do exist for real.
They're in Oregon. I heard about them when I visited Portland, and they joke about the slugs up there because it rains so much. So they have slugs out on the sidewalk all over. So yeah, they're a real thing. I didn't see any on this trip. I think it was not wet enough along the Mendocino coast, but in Portland, they do have them. They do have them in Oregon.
Okay.
Joke.
How big are they? Are they the size of a banana?
I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I haven't seen any that big, but they joke about them like they're slug cookbooks and stuff like this. I mean, they're
Yes. So I really did think they were like that big. I mean,
not seen any. All I can tell you is my experience. I've not seen any that big, so I can't.
okay.
Did anyone, this is Kathy in Dallas, did anyone see the tinfoil that they put around the General Sherman to keep the fires away from them on the news when they were having the fires? They put them all around the sequoias.
Of course, they're trying to protect those trees, and
Of course.
have had fire damage, and they have survived. The fires also have been, the Dixie Fire also got into Lassen. I didn't show the map that had that, the whole eastern part of Lassen was burned pretty badly. This is not sequoia country particularly, but yes, they were trying to protect those trees. You can't just get another sequoia or redwood and plant it
No,
tomorrow.
I got tickled at that. And I also got tickled at the artificial turf they put on the glacier in Norway, trying to keep it from melting this summer. I thought that was great.
Just as a sideline research, Maryland, it says banana slugs are 9 inches long, and it's the second largest slug in the world. They
Okay,
didn't say what the largest, the Goliath slug or the monster slug was.
well, I did not encounter slugs on this trip anyway.
Good. Jack, so this same sister-in-law had a daughter that got married, and was she married around the sequoia or the redwoods?
I think it would have to be Redwood because it was by the coast.
That's true. Yeah, you walk down this like steps going down to this dell with a little waterfall and a pool, and it was a wedding venue. But it was, surrounded by these redwoods. It was really lovely. Yeah.
There's lots of outdoor stuff you can do. My oldest daughter and her husband went just before the pandemic I think with back roads, and did kayaking and whitewater rafting and bicycling and hiking, the whole shebang in Northern California, in the redwoods. They loved it.
That's great. Does anyone else have any questions? Let me see if any more were written that I didn't see. Okay.
Any you thought of since then?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions you thought of after, since we've been talking?
Or
Because I think I will save the cookie recipe because it's kind of involved. So we'll do that another day. So,
Mary,
yes.
when you go on hikes, how long are the hikes that you go on?
Well, I'm now 85, so they're getting shorter every year. I used to do 3-5 miles pretty easily. Actually, I did about 5 miles at Petra, which was just the year before last. But now I'm lucky to walk around the block. I'm really out of shape. You shouldn't be asking me how out of shape I am.
Oh, well, thank you, because I'm up there too, and by the thought of taking long hikes is beyond something I can think.
I always take short hikes. I do not do long hikes. I've never done long hikes, but I can do 5-6 miles. I've hiked a little, on the Appalachian Trail, just, from one point to another, nothing like the real hikes. And I like to be out in the woods, but I'm not in shape to do it. Even when I was younger, I'm not. But we used to go, I like being out in the woods, and we used to do camping and that sort of stuff, and always do some walking. But I'm getting less and less able to do that.
Jack does a lot of hiking long distance, but we've noticed that a lot of the parks will have, and Jack might speak to this more, but they'll have small loops.
Yes.
Like you'll start down a long path and there'll be a loop back for somebody that wants to do a shorter hike.
They all do that. They give you a range of things you can do. We did the Great Ocean Road out of Melbourne, and went through one of the hiking areas, but it was a loop, but you didn't have any way to control how long you were going to hike. And if you weren't a hiker, you might have been in a little bit of trouble, because there was a lot of up and down and roundabout, and it was maybe half-hour walk. And for people who were not really in shape, it would have been too much.
And where's that?
That was in Australia.
Oh,
They didn't tell you ahead of time
oh,
how long this is going to be. But my sisters and I have hiked in all the national parks. And one down in Nebraska, which I did do, even though I don't do up. I did the like 20 switchbacks, to get to the top, but it was worth every minute of it. I had to stop. I had to stop and catch my breath. I'm not, you can hear me. I'm stopped up with allergies and I can't breathe. And then I have that don't work anymore, you know, that kind of stuff when you get old.
Bring water.
Not in as good shape as I used to be.
Oh, Jack just said, bring water. If you ever head into the woods, no matter how short a hike, take water.
Yes, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
see the Warwicks are joining from Cookville.
Do what now?
Oh, Cookville.
Looks like Billy Warwick is joining us from Cookville.
Oh, from Cookville. Yes, I've stayed in Cookville.
We an Evergreener in Cookville.
Mary, I just wanted to say that you're kind of our hero. We hope to all get to be 85 and still do the traveling you're doing. So, you know,
Well, I pretty much hung it up, Sandra. And I'm not up to it anymore. Even this little trip to Denver, I was at the farthest gates in every.
By the way, they're, you know, all kind of different Southern accents, and Cookville is pronounced Cookville, V-U-L by the Tennesseans.
Yeah.
I was just touching base to let you know we're still on our way.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Billy's gonna, and Lanny will be at our house Tuesday night.
Right.
Which will
That's
be
the
great.
plan.
Great.
Billy, are you at an Evergreener in Cookville?
We are, and they're in the car with us right now.
Because we were probably with them.
what's their names?
Probably have been too, because I stopped them.
Carol and Ted Ludgate. Yeah, Mary, you stayed with us.
Yes, I was going to say, I know floodgates, of course.
Yeah. So it's dark in the car, but anyway, we're just checking in.
It's fabulous.
Love
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll check out. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Earlier, people were asking Mary about the preparation for trips and how she does it. And going back to the old fashioned people who did it, not the internet, you know, if you go to the main books, now remember, I'm saying Folgers. What's the two main travel book people?
Voters.
Yeah, Foders and Brummers.
They're good.
Or online. And the reason I like them better than just going to a city or a state is they're very organized. So if they're going to do a city, then they're going to just very clearly give you the top 10 things to see in the city, how to get there, what it costs, you know, how many hours you should spend there. And it's a much more organized way to plan the trip than just going to a city and they're going to give you 50 places to go to and you don't know what's worth it, what's not worth it. They don't give you the details. It takes much, much longer to go city by city by city than to go to a guidebooks website when they're gonna, and you can even print them out. You don't want to read it online. You can take it with you. They have maps of how to walk to all the different sites. So it's a much easier way to plan a trip, to just do it by somebody who's already done it for you.
I agree. I do plan and look to see where I want to go and how long to stay there, how long it's going to take to get from one place to another, where the Evergreeners live, and plan around that. Yeah, I do that.
We do.
And may I say, she does a good job because her sisters weren't able to go with her when we had our world meet in Colorado Springs. And she had already planned the trip and I went along and it was wonderful. I didn't have to do anything but say, I need to stop, Mary. That was wonderful.
Yeah, we went to the Black Hills from our conference in Boulder and a bit sister in Denver. So Kathy accompanied me from that conference and we did a short road trip from there.
Nice. I lived in Boulder for like 6 years, I guess.
There last
Yeah. Yeah, Kathleen, I think you've lived everywhere. Are you running from the law?
Well, and it's all been after like college, you know, because I didn't move much as a child. So Oh, goodness.
Thank you.
Well, we have like one more minute if anybody has. Marilyn, did you have something else?
Thank you for the advice about looking for the travel guides online, because I've gotten frustrated looking for information online because it seems like it's all advertising.
Yeah. And they just give you too much information. It's too much to read through. And the travel guides are more concise. You can have one paragraph, all you need to know. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you.
We generally will plan everything day by day, all the way along. And I plan the routes.
And it's fun because then you learn about the place before you go there. So by the time you get there, you kind of feel like you know it.
Mhm.
And you know what you should be looking at.
And I kind of, give I'll do a day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as we get there and we see how much time we have, maybe we'll do 1, maybe we'll be 2, 3, so I give myself a variety of how much to do or not to do, and then a day off to do what people tell me to do. So that's kind of how we plan it.
That's a good idea to factor in that day off.
I just say that for
Yeah.
long trips, you just can't go, at least I can't go 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 weeks and not
And
take
Yeah.
it off. I'm just worn out.
You have to leave, you have to leave room for downtime, for shopping time, for, I said, things that other people you didn't know about. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put a day in like at least every 2 weeks if I'm going to be going a long time. And I
Oh,
have,
we do more than that. Boy, you're good. You're really good.
that's like our
So,
6.
so I have to relate a running from the law story. So not me, but I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail, and it turns out and if you know about the trail, people do not use their real name. They adopt a name. They come up with an assumed name, a trail name. Mine was Vámonos, which is let's go in Spanish.
Yeah.
Other people were, this hiker, that, or whatever, or any name. So there's this guy who the FBI was hunting. And it turns out he had been living on the Appalachian Trail hiking, and he had embezzled some $4.5 million from PepsiCo. He was an accountant.
Gosh.
And they caught him
Oh.
because he had gotten a few too many beers in him at some stop and started talking with the locals. And they said, well, we know Gumby, is he the guy? And sure enough, Gumby was the embezzler. And the FBI did track him down on the trail. So,
Why do people take a different name when walking the trail? What's that?
it is a tradition, but it's also a way to not carry any baggage of your previous life. So it's symbolic in some ways, where you just go and you leave everything at home that you don't want to carry, and you can be your nice new person on the trail.
Just a hiker.
Yep, you're just a hiker, and it's a wonderful, freeing way to do that.
So, Catherine, what's your real name?
What is my trail name?
Your real name?
My real name is Kathleen.
Okay.
I wouldn't go for that necessarily. It could be an assumed name.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go hike the Appalachian Trail. It's way out of my league for sure. Based on Jack's stories, no, not for 2 and 3, 4 weeks at a time.
We've just,
No.
just read Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, and after reading that, nobody's going to want to do it.
Well, and he didn't do the whole thing. He only did part of it.
He didn't. He's gone back and done pieces of it after that. But he did recommend the best part of the trail was through Shenandoah National Park. And that's the part that I was walking on. And
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
but it was the best part because I was staying at the lodge there, and I did hike around Shenandoah.
That is the part that has the most bears also.
Oh,
That's true too, because they know where the food is.
Yeah, you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight. It's been really fun. And Mary, that was outstanding. Your pictures. I had so much trouble deciding which pictures to put up. They were just gorgeous. So thank you for that. And so next week, we will have the Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park. And then the next week, we'll do the photography on how to get a good picture of an eclipse and how to plan for it. So be kind of fun to learn something a little different. And Jim is quite knowledgeable and he's a professional photographer. So I will look forward to both of those, and we will see you next week. And we'll stay on a little bit longer. So I'm just officially saying.
Thank you, Mary.
YouTubes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Good. Well,
Good
thanks.
night. I enjoyed it.
Good, thanks.
Thank you for joining.
Yes, it was fun.